Carlton make the great escape against Port Adelaide to go 4-1.
The Demons are ready for another premiership push after a big win against the Giants.
And the Eagles are gonna win the flag. This is the DrewFooty Show.
Hey, long road, took a tumble down this black hole. Stuck in Sunday League, but I'm on levels with Ronaldo.
Hello, you plonkers, and welcome back to another episode this week of the DrewFooty Show. It was a great round of football, Jesse. Thoroughly enjoyed seeing my team flog the Bombers and seeing your team get flogged by the Swans. How are your emotions?
Oh, I'm pretty dead inside, as I've said in numerous episodes of this, so frankly, bring it on.
Make sure you go check out our Instagram at DrewFooty_, because we're going to start getting way more interactive than I have been recently, Jesse. I need to get back to the roots of the show. When I started the show, it was going to be a fan-based show. We're going to increase the interaction between us and the fans, and then I just started cruising with it, just started doing my own research and whatnot, not looking into the questions as much. But we're going to make a new segment on the show, Jesse, called the Quick Fire Steamroll. I haven't got a name for it yet, but it's going to be 30 seconds, quick fire. I'm going to put out a question box on my Instagram story on DrewFooty, and I want you guys to go over there and spam it with short questions. I'm going to give Jesse 30 seconds to answer them, and we're going to count how many you get and see if you can get quicker and quicker out of them every week. Does that sound good, buddy?
Oh, I guess.
That sounds great to me. So just make sure you go follow DrewFooty_, because we're going to start getting you guys involved in the show much more. Also, I'm not going to do a bloke of the week this week, Jesse, because we had no nominations at all. And I'm trying to flog this fish, and I'm not getting anything back from it, so to say. So I need nominations for bloke of the week. I need quick fire questions for you for the next week's show. Simple instructions. Go do it, you plonkers.
It's funny you say that, because I was just flogging the fish about 15 minutes ago.
The reason we're doing that quickfire question segment, Jesse, is because people have been commenting, why didn't you speak about the Bombers? Why didn't you speak about North Melbourne? Why didn't you speak about North Melbourne again?
Why do you
Where
think?
was Gold Coast? So to accommodate for that, what we're going to do is that quickfire round so that every question is answered. I wasn't going to talk about the Brisbane and Collingwood game, Jesse, but we have a question on it, and that's what we do. We answer questions. We have a question here from JZ Neil 3. He wants to know, is Joe Daniher a top 3 key forward in the game right now? He's kicked 16 goals for the season, Jesse. He leads the Coleman medal race, tied with Ben King. I've been pretty critical of him in the past, but he was a pivotal part of the win that the Brisbane Lions had over Collingwood on Thursday night. It was a good game. I was happy to see Collingwood show up for the contest, because I thought they were going to get absolutely smoked up in Brisbane. But the question is, Joe Daniher, is he a top 3 forward in the game right now, Jesse?
Well, yeah, it's a tough one. If you did power rankings as such, you'd go off form, and he's probably very close to that conversation. I'd probably still have Hawkins and Cameron ahead of him. And I think Mackay still has deserved that top 3 ranking just because he's won a Coleman. But ask me again in 5 to 10 weeks and see where Daniher ranks in that, and there's a good chance he's nuzzled his way into the top 3.
We didn't have any questions on the North Melbourne versus Bulldogs game, so that deserves a skip, Jesse. We're going to skip right to my favourite game of the round, which was Eagles versus Sydney. We were in attendance at this game, and I did a vlog on the channel. We got a few questions here, Jesse, so I'll just start off with this one from Ashworth Blair, who wants to know, why are the Eagles shite?
Wow. Okay. So I don't know if I can unpack all the reasons we suck. I don't know. It's hard to look at our performances this year as a whole and dissect it, because I think there's been so many mitigating circumstances. And then in the one game where we seem to have, nowhere near our best 22 still, but still past the point of really having that excuse, we got annihilated. We got beaten in every facet of the game, to be honest. So I don't know what you could put it down to. I think some factors are Sydney just know how to beat us. That's a one factor. They just annihilate us every time they play us. And there's probably a bit of maybe a bit of complacency after last week. And I don't even know if you could blame lack of match conditioning, because I think we were just annihilated from the onset. So I am hoping that it's a blip on the radar and it's not a true reflection of how we are, to be honest.
It is looking like a downward trajectory for the Eagles, Jesse.
Oh, I think
we can finally say that if it wasn't already confirmed. Well, last year you were sort of still in that finals hunt, and we were speaking about it on the way out of the game, that West Coast, the age profile of their side, they should still be trying to compete for finals. Is it time for change at West Coast? Is it time that you put your balls into the draft?
Yes, I do think. I think that's kind of been a necessity over the last couple of years, but we haven't had the resources because of the trading with Tim Kelly and all these other factors. But I think regardless of whether you think we are still good enough this year to compete for finals, the focus has to be on youth. But if we don't get this transition right, then it's going to be a long time at the bottom because we have not prepared well for what the squad's going to look like in 3 years when there's no Nat Nui or Shuey or potentially no Yo, McGovern, those guys as well. The next generation, it's not evident where that's going to come from. So we do need to invest in maybe 2 good drafts and hopefully it looks a little smoother.
That sounds like a real headache, buddy. We got another question from Lick PG9. Strange name. But he wants to know, are the Swans contenders? They put you to the sword, Jesse. It wasn't just a matter of you guys sucking and being dreadful. It was also Sydney playing some really good footy. And they've obviously got the stars that we talk about all the time. Isaac Heaney had a very good game. Enjoyed watching him go about his craft. Corey Warner had a very good game out of the middle as well. Do you think they have what it takes to go all the way this year?
I do think they're a contender. It's a tough one when you've got Melbourne, who I do think are head and shoulders above the rest. So to say that they could win the flag, that's a tough question. But are they clearly not the third best side out there right now between Melbourne and Brisbane? I think that's a fair question to ask.
I think Freo was second on the ladder, Jesse. Sorry.
Oh, yes. Congrats on your win over Essendon.
After that great performance, Jesse, I'm going to give Eagles the losers of the week this week because you can't show up in prime time and get your pants pulled down. So I'll happily give West Coast the losers of the week after being winners of the week last week. It's the real swings and roundabouts on the DrewFooty Show.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They can't afford to drop too many. I wouldn't say it was a winnable game, but after a poor start to the season, you can't just not show up when you finally got some players back. So, yeah, I agree. Fair call. So the next question, Druzy, we have from the fans is from Ethan Wood, 196, and he wants to know, how far can St Kilda go? What are your thoughts?
Well, this game we were speaking about last week when we were doing our tips, like against Gold Coast, it seems to be quite a sticky game at times. It's always been close between those two sides. But St Kilda clearly, easily won this game. They're in some good form at the moment. Hard to stop. Jack Higgins had a really good game. And yeah, I think that they could definitely be a top 8 side. I think they're looking like a lock for that at the moment, given the form of other sides as well. I just want to see them play a true side that's going to test them. Freo are probably in that same boat where we haven't beaten a top quality side, like a proven top 4 side, like a Sydney or a Brisbane. That's where you really earn your stripes. So how far could they go? Maybe like a semi. We'll leave it at that, I reckon. I reckon they might make it into a semi-final this year if we're talking about where their road ends. But yeah, I've enjoyed watching St Kilda this year. What do you make of the Saints?
I think they're building nicely after their round 1 blip against Collingwood, and they had a really good third term in that game. But for the rest of the game, they weren't as good as Collingwood. But since then, got to give credit for the momentum that they've built, and like you say, still haven't knocked off a real big dog with the comp. But I think they're still in that unproven periphery, kind of just outside the top 4 kind of teams, and it remains to be seen. Can they, finish 5th, or are they going to, bottle it and miss finals? It's still not clear, but I think on quality, they've been probably top 5 or 6 so far.
Adelaide took on Richmond on Saturday Arvo, Jesse. And this one was probably the toughest game of the round to tip. I think it divided a lot of tippers. I tipped the Crows. I got it right. I'm 8 for 8 so far this round. Hoping for Geelong to come through for my first perfect round since I've ever tipped, I reckon. But Adelaide brought the fight to the more experienced Tigers. And when push comes to shove in these sorts of games, when you've got a young list profile coming up against a veteran side that have won 3 flags, you'd sort of expect the Tigers to come out on top. But this Adelaide side has a lot of fight, Jesse. I'm very impressed with how they've gone about their business this year. Are they 4-1 now or 3-2?
Not even close. 2-3.
Yeah.
They've only beaten Port Adelaide and now Richmond.
Not even close. But they nearly beat Freo. They should have beat Freo. So that, and
they lost
to
Essendon by 4 points too.
Exactly. So yeah, pretty much 4-1, bro.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, just like we're basically 4-1.
How impressed have you been with the Crows? How impressed have you been with the Crows, Jesse?
Yeah, very, very impressed. I like the spirit that they play with. And like we just touched on, very close to beating Fremantle and Essendon, two teams that obviously, Essendon was a finalist last year and Fremantle are second on the ladder at the moment. So I got to give them credit. And I think I'm reluctant to give too much praise to a player like Taylor Walker because of the backlash that could receive. But if we're just talking about it in a football sense, putting him aside, he's not a bad shout for one of the best key forwards in the comp at the moment, to be honest, because he's picked up where he left off last year, and it really adds something different to that young team between getting close to winning and ultimately winning a game when he kicks 4 or 5. So they could be 4-1 if Taylor Walker had played this whole season, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been heaps impressed with Josh Rochelle as well. I knew nothing about him, like getting drafted and whatnot, but you were pretty hot on him coming into the season, and he just looks like an 100-game plus player already. He's a real good set shot as well, which I can't say for a lot of players in the league at the moment. But to come into this Adelaide side, and he sort of plays like a mature player. He's very reliable. Josh Rochelle could be a rising star this year. He kicked 2 on the weekend. I think he kicked 4 the week before, and he kicked 5 on debut against Freo. So he is absolutely tearing it up in his first season.
While we're on the topic, I will give the Crows my winners of the week for this performance. It wasn't a week where there was any standout, in my opinion. There's a few that could have been nominated, but I'll give Adelaide the credit for winning a big home Saturday night game against a team that should really have beaten them, but they're sort of dabbing on the haters at the moment, Adelaide. They're playing some really good footy.
Support for the DrewFooty Show is brought to you by Manscaped, who are the world leaders in below-the-belt grooming. Jesse, we're both fortunate enough to be sponsored by the great company that is Manscaped, and they have just released the performance package, including the Lawnmower 4.0, which is the best shaver on the market. I've used it, got no nicks, no cuts, had a real tidy job there. LED light, showing me where to go, ceramic blade to reduce the risk of nicks and cuts. How big are you on this product, Jesse?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a real shame that we're not a baseball sort of show because they've done a great job of eliminating foul balls.
They sure have, with the liquid formulations, the anti-chafing ball cream, and also the ball deodorant. Makes your ball smell good, makes them look clean. Just get the job done, lads. I can't recommend this enough. If you have any qualms, any questions about how to get clean below the belt, just head over to Manscaped, have a look at their products, use code DREWSY20 at checkout, all caps, no spaces, for 20% off your order and free worldwide shipping. Let's get on with the episode. The Saturday night game, which you streamed, Jesse, was the Melbourne versus GWS boys at the MCG. Melbourne are on an absolute tear, and off the bat, I'm just going to give them my winners of the week nomination this week. They haven't lost in over 260 days, Jesse. They're just playing, it looks like they're playing with their eyes closed, mate. Second nature to them at this point. The way that this team is connected, they know what to expect of each other. They're playing predictable. They're just flowing, mate. It's beautiful to watch. I spoke about this on my 9 Things I Learned video, but the speed that they can get the ball from their half-back line up into space in the forward line just cuts through teams. And Ed Langdon as well. I was massive on him when he was at Freo. He's headed over to Melbourne, and he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves. He's running like 16 kilometres a game, really tearing it up. You watched this game, Jesse. You streamed it. What did you make of this big win from the Ds?
Well, I'm going to be completely honest with you, Drewsy. About halfway through the game when it was an annihilation, we started sinking a few beers and talking about our favourite Adam Sandler films. But from what I could tell, it was one-way traffic. I mean, GWS are really disappointing, but putting that aside for a minute, what stands out is Melbourne, although in addition to being really structurally sound and having midfield beasts, they're also a very clean team. Like they must use Manscaped, frankly. But they're all just like one-touch players. Like they'd get themselves out of trouble and there would be no double touches, no fumbling. And that was just evident that they... I think there was a period where GWS were, dominating possession, getting the ball out of the midfield, but Melbourne just, were far, far cleaner. So ultimately, they looked far better than them. Analysis.
GWS, they've, in my expert opinion, they've got to get rid of Leon Cameron at this point because there's been question marks on them ever since 2020.
Yeah.
They made the grand final in 2019. Ever since 2020, there's been question marks on them. With the quality in their side that they have, you can see that these players are busting a gut when they're playing. It's not like their heads are down like we saw probably for Port Adelaide in the last few weeks, maybe not against Carlton, but like the desire to win and to compete is there. They just clearly don't understand the game plan. I'm calling for Leon Cameron's head this week, Jesse. He should get sacked. I know it's against Melbourne, and it's pretty harsh to judge a performance against the best team in the league. But to go on a road trip to Perth, lose Freo, and then just get absolutely blown out of the water by Melbourne, where does this leave GWS? They are in a stinking pit.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that. Whether or not it'd be right now that you sack Cameron or you just sort of wait for the end of the year, because I don't know how much growth you really get from a caretaker coach, just my opinion. But I think when you weight performance versus expectations, they've been pretty rancid. I think their midfield is so talented. They should be playing a lot better than they are. Admittedly, they had an exodus at the end of 2020, I believe, and Jeremy Cameron amongst about 5 other players left. But still, I don't think they have the excuse to be playing quite as poorly as they are. So yeah, they've been one of probably the season's biggest disappointment, other than the obvious Port Adelaide.
Kicking off the Sunday games, the first one was Carlton versus Port Adelaide. And Jesse, you put in an edgy tip. I know you could come up with a pun for that, so I'll acknowledge that your thoughts probably went that way. But
Nope.
It was looking like a real stinky tip, and I know there's another pun there. And I acknowledge that your thoughts went that way.
No idea what you're referencing.
It was a tale of two halves, Jesse. And I know that you're going to... Nah, I'm just joking with you. First half, Carlton just blew Port Adelaide out of the water. We've been talking about their key forwards, Curnow and Mackay, absolutely tearing it up. Jack Martin popped up with a few goals as well. But their mids were absolutely all over Port Adelaide's, getting all the clearances. Hewitt's continued his good form. Kennedy looked promising as well. Chera, as much as I hate to say it, had a pretty good game. They were all over Port Adelaide in that first half, and it just looked like they were going to coast home to victory, which brings me to a comment made by fellow plonker Mason Knight 6, who said Carlton won't win a final if they play like that last half. Jesse, what was that second half display from Carlton? Was it a good fight back? How much respect do you have for Port Adelaide for getting back into that game and almost winning it? Just give me your overall thoughts, mate.
Well, okay, on the first point, I would say you definitely respect Port Adelaide for the comeback when they're 50 points down, the desire to drop your head and just start thinking about your McDonald's order after the game. But from a Carlton perspective, I have never been so equally impressed and equally disappointed in the team in one single performance. And I think that will echo what their fans are saying. The way they're finishing games is not sustainable. It's been really poor, and it's almost cost them multiple occasions so far. I think the Bulldogs almost reined in, what was a big lead at halftime, I think. And then we saw Hawthorn do the same thing Port did. And ultimately Carlton's just hung on, but they're not too far from being, 2 and 3 rather than 4 and 1. So it is a concern, and it's not a concern from just this year. They've been conceding 5-goal swings since, David Teague's early days as well. So I think about 2019 was where that momentum sort of started. So they've got serious issues, and I don't know what the deal is. They just can't arrest momentum. I don't know if it's fitness, but it seems too simplistic to say it's fitness. My concern for them in this game was, no Cripps. I think they've at least proven that they can play some top-notch footy without Paddy Cripps playing in that midfield. So in that first half, they reached a gear that I found really impressive, but the fade-outs are so bad. If they can, erase those, then they're a top 4 team. But until then, they're not even guaranteed a final spot.
It's going to be a good game this week, Jesse. Carlton versus Freo. I hate playing Carlton because the last few times we have been beaten by them, it's been less than 2 goals. That Jack Noon's goal after the siren, which was absolute BS. Like, these things factor into my emotional state when it comes to playing Carlton. So I want to see where we are compared to the Blues this week. And obviously the return of Adam Chera, it's going to cause a bit of a stir, I think. There will be some heat in this kitchen this week, Jesse. But I'm happy that we're going into this heated kitchen after the game that we just played against Essendon. Jesse, we'll move on to the Dockers game where we just blew Essendon out of the water. In my preseason predictions, I put Freo 8th and I put Essendon 9th. And I copped quite a lot of stick from Essendon fans for doing that, saying that I don't know what I'm talking about. Essendon are better than Freo, blah, blah, blah. The reason that I put Freo above Essendon was because I remembered the game that we played last year. Freo hardly brought half of our best footy, and Essendon only just sort of come over the top of us in the last quarter. But Freo showed their best footy in that second half against the Dons today. As soon as we lifted the intensity, got on top of the centre bounce, started getting more inside 50s, we started putting the pressure on Essendon. Took us a while to start kicking straight, but once we did, the floodgates opened. Helped also by some questionable refereeing decisions. I'm not going to deny that. But we cruised to victory, and that's not very often that Freo do that. I can't remember the last time that we won by more than 45 points away from home. When the ball was turned over, we didn't just go long down the line, which has been a staple in past years. We looked to go into the middle of the ground to open up the play. And yeah, it was a very clear game plan that was executed well. And I'm very happy as a Dockers fan, although it is only Essendon. I suppose, I don't know how much you can read into that, given their form hasn't been great this season. But going into that game against Carlton next week makes me feel good that we are going into it with some good form. What do you make of the Dockers, Jesse?
First off, I want to point out that I think Essendon really suck. Let's be honest. I think they've been really disappointing. However, that's not. I'm not actually trying to detract from Fremantle when I say that, because I do think this was a big step forward for Fremantle in the sense that they've done something that they haven't done all year really, and really put a team to the sword. Other than the Derby, again, I think that's a little different.
Yeah.
Whereas Essendon, I don't have that excuse. I know they're missing merit, but nonetheless, it was a clinical performance. And Frank, I said this before the game. I think Fremantle are better than Essendon, and that's why I tipped Fremantle. I think in last week's, you were close to tipping Essendon. Did you change your tip?
Yeah, I tipped Freo.
Yeah. So I was confident Fremantle would win. However, I thought it would be a gritty game, and it wasn't. Fremantle were far too good. So I think they're building momentum. We saw that against GWS in the final quarter. Maybe things are starting to click, and they're starting to look a bit more, dangerous offensively, which I think is the big question mark they need to answer.
Freo Hub wants to know, should we start to consider Fremantle a top 8 side after that win?
Maybe. We do consider the competition. I don't think Fremantle's... I certainly don't think they're out of that conversation. So, yeah, I think I'd rate them in my top 8 sides at the moment. But, historically, with injuries, sometimes Fremantle fall away. So there's no guarantee. But I think on quality and performance... I think some of the mid-table teams this year have been a bit flaccid. So, so there's an opening there. There's an opportunity. So, yes, I think Fremantle can play finals.
Heading into our tips for round 6. Obviously, round 5 isn't finished yet, so I'm not going to call out the winner or anything like that. But let's just get into round 6. GWS versus St Kilda is the first game of the round on Friday night. I'm tipping the away team on this one, Jesse. GWS have given me no reason to tip them, but I feel like this is one that they could bounce back on. However, I'm going to tip St Kilda to win by 14 points.
I think GWS suck. I'm sorry to say it. And St Kilda have done well this year. And of course, I rate GWS' potential, so any game could be the game they click into gear, but they've done nothing to give me any confidence. So St Kilda easily.
At Mars Stadium, the Bulldogs are taking on the Crows. I'm going to tip the Bulldogs in this one. I think they've turned a corner in their season after a pretty disappointing start, but I reckon they're going to start to get the wheels truly rolling against Crows this week.
I agree with you. I think they're building slowly, and they are still a bit too good of a team for me to tip Adelaide. But Adelaide are dangerous, and it would be big if they win this. But yeah, you have to tip the Dogs, I think.
The biggest clash of the Titans on Saturday is Port Adelaide take on West Coast, 18th versus 16th. After that performance that Port put in today, I'm going to tip Port to get it done at home.
Yep, fair calls. I am going to be biased here. I think the Eagles will just win a game that nobody saw coming, to be honest.
Okay.
I think we've never lost to Port at this ground.
Yeah.
And I think we will be able to shake off that loss. I think we had a reality check after a good performance. I think we'll bounce back.
I'm going to bring my bias to the next game as Freo take on Carlton. I will never tip Freo to lose to Carlton. So I'm going to tip Freo to get the job done and end my misery of Carlton defeats. Are you going to tip Freo or Carlton?
I'm really torn, to be honest. It's the home ground factor for me that swings it. If it was in Melbourne, I would tip Carlton. Cripps back into this game is a big factor. It's a big win for Carlton. I presume he'll be back in. Fremantle have been good. The thing is, if you just avoid being 5 goals down at halftime, you've got this in the bag. So I don't know. I feel reluctant to tip against Carlton 2 weeks in a row, but I'm going to tip Carlton. I'm sorry, I don't...
I actually think Carlton will win, to be honest.
I'm iffy on it. I'm going to say Carlton, but I'm only 51% confident.
All right, next game, Geelong versus North Melbourne. Nah, Geelong. Not actually.
Blundstone Arena, they've proven hard to beat at times, but still, you'd have to go Geelong.
Metricon hosts Gold Coast and Brisbane. Brisbane will get the job done because they're a quality outfit.
Yep, easy.
Richmond versus Melbourne, MCG. I think that's Anzac Eve, potentially?
Yeah, it would be.
yeah, you can't tip against Melbourne. They're the best team in the comp at the moment.
I think I've only tipped Richmond correctly once this year, so I'm going to tip Melbourne, which means I've probably consigned them to a loss. Sorry, everyone.
On Anzac Day, we've got Hawthorn versus Sydney down at UTAS. That throws a bit of a spanner in the works. I reckon Sydney are a bit of a anywhere, anytime team. I think they're making that transition now. So I'm going to tip the Swans to get a big win against Hawthorn, but that'll be a good game.
We'll be able to tip this more confidently after the Easter Monday game, which we are not, well, that hasn't happened yet at the time we record this. I feel like Hawthorn are a tricky side to beat in Tasmania, and I can't remember how Sydney go down there. I know that they lost in the final to GWS. But for now, I'm tipping Sydney conservatively. But we'll see how the Hawks go tomorrow.
The big Anzac game is Collingwood versus Essendon at the MCG. After that performance from Essendon against Freo, I've no reason to tip them. And Collingwood put in a pretty good shift against Brisbane on Thursday night. So I'm going to tip the Pies to win the Anzac Day game.
I feel very confidently that Collingwood have been a far better team than Essendon this year. However, Anzac Day... There's certainly potential for Essendon to just come out and play well for no reason. So I'm tipping Collingwood, but again, another one that makes me uncomfortable, Drews.
I think there's going to be quite a few upsets this week. It's not going to be as easy as round 5 was. That wraps up our tips, and that's going to wrap up the video as well. So make sure you head over to the DrewFooty _ Instagram account, because next week, Jesse, we're going to go through our winners and losers, and then we're going to do maybe a couple extra games depending on how much we talk. But the quickfire round will go through every game. So winners and losers, quickfire, that is the segment structure going forward. So get over there, DrewFooty _ go follow it up. Subscribe if you're new, trying to hit 7K by the end of May. Thank you for coming on, Jesse. Any parting words?
No, thank you for having me. And hopefully next week we'll discuss it after Fremantle's been embarrassed and West Coast get a surprise away win.
Sure won't, buddy. We'll see you next week. Take care. You plonkers.
Bye.